It's your weekly dose of confessions. Coming up, a bit of this.
Oh, it's his fault.
That's superb.
And some of this.
Look at Harry's mum. She looks like a banana.
Very good.
And I
see?
actually did.
Simon Mayo, 88 to 91 FM, Radio 2.
Hello and welcome to our Confessions podcast. Very nice of you to download us. This week's concise collection of terrible tales include a daughter's driving disaster, vitriolic voting, a beloved budgie's last breath, and the amazingly articulate Alice. Here it is. Drive Time Confessions, that's what this is now. It's BBC Radio 2. Thank you very much. You can confess online. You can send us an email. The collective are herein assembled. Here we go. This one is from M, as in E and M. Father Simon and the ever-caring collective. I feel compelled... Oh, it's a Father's Day, by the way. It's a Father's Day-themed confession. It came in too late to include on Thursday's programme. Did you have a nice Father's Day?
I did, yeah.
Did you get something?
Yeah, I did. I got a massive, huge bar of chocolate. And I'm only halfway through.
Can't go through.
Daddy's watching the footy tonight.
Such a weirdo.
I'm finishing.
Oh, yeah!
Can anyone share in your
Nobody
daddy
gets
bar?
any more of my chocolate.
It's a kind of life, isn't it?
I got chocolate, sherbet lemons, and a mug. How about that? See?
yeah.
Yeah. So, Father Simon, the ever-caring collective, this is from M. Right, I feel compelled to confess to something which has burdened me for many years. This confession concerns my fabulous father, Nigel, who was blessed with only one equally wonderful son and 4 rather mischievous daughters. I feel it appropriate. Father's Day has passed. Just change the tense there. To get this off my chest. Whilst we were never really troublesome daughters, we do, along with my brother, like to tease him as much as possible. Rarely referring to him by his proper title, we would call him Nige, or Niggle, or Wiggle, or Nigella Lawson, which he really doesn't like. Which you can imagine, being a bloke. I'd like to take you back to the summer of the year 2000. It was the millennium and I had just graduated from university with a 2-1. Get me. I was also turning 21 that year, and the sense of achievement and impending grown-upness was almost too much to bear. It so happened, at this time, that Dad had undergone eye surgery, and unfortunately, it wasn't healing properly, poor chap. So I, coming-of-age daughter number 3, was insured on Dad's big posh car, so that I could put this newly found grown-upness to good use and ferry Dad about. I took up my role as most responsible daughter very, very graciously, and thus ensued a lovely few father-daughter weeks as I drove Dad around for errands and his pillar of society meetings. As reward for my excellent daughterly duties, I was granted the honour of being able to take myself out in his car from time to time without Nige being present. I liked driving around in it, imagining that this must be how it feels to be a hugely successful businesswoman even, a world I was surely about to enter with my new sparkly qualification. On one such occasion I took myself off for a potter around Stratford-upon-Avon. Upon arrival in Shakespeare's hometown, I parked up in my usual pay-and-display car park and headed for the shops. A few hours later I returned to the car park and started to manoeuvre out of the space. It was at this moment that I suddenly realised that I wasn't in my small and happily compact car anymore, but in a rather large, rather long estate car, and in an incredibly small, thin car park space. What should have been a simple 3-point turn soon turned into a 15, maybe 20-point turn, and I still wasn't getting anywhere. My attempted escape resembled that scene from Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery, where he gets stuck in a corridor trying to do a 3-point turn in a luggage truck. Forward, backwards, forwards, backwards. I was starting to sweat and the cars around me were building up. Nige is not going to like this one, I thought. After trying every manoeuvre that I could think of, there was only one thing for it. I bumped off the walls of the car park. And finally I was free. Oopsie, I thought, but no one saw. When I got home, I decided to do the honourable thing. and say nothing. Dad didn't know I'd been out that day, so nothing to worry about there. Several months passed and nothing was said. Dad's eye had healed enough for him to be able to drive again, and I'd all but forgotten about the incident in the car park. Then, one day, on the driveway, Dad, with his eyes now working splendidly, was inspecting his rear bumper and said very politely, "Excuse me, my dear, I don't remember that scratch being there before you had the car. What on earth are all these little dents on the wings?" Thankfully, his eyes still weren't, frankly, as wonderful as they should be, because it did look like a lunar landscape with all the bumps that I'd given it. He peered at me using that suspicious look that only fathers have. I answered using these terrible words. "Well, Father, your eyes aren't quite what they used to be, of course." He looked at me and sighed as if to agree. It was the sigh that only a man who's been surrounded by women for so much of his life can make. And so I have to seek forgiveness from Stratford-upon-Avon Council for any damage to their car park. Bump, 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 indeed. But mainly from my wonderful father, who has had to put up with decades of torment from my brother and my sisters and I. And although the scratch on this car was only small, the dents easily repaired, I did deceive him terribly. If it helps, and get this, if it helps, he did reverse into my leg a few weeks later.
Oh, right. Oh, fine.
Trapping my knee between his
What?
and my car. Come to think of it, maybe he knew all along, and that was my punishment. So you see, there's a payoff there. He did reverse into my leg a few weeks later. Well, see, he took advantage of father's incapacitation, as the eyes weren't recovering fast enough, to deceive him.
So is she saying that the father, she having told him that, the father then thought the car was fine? I'm assuming that.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Then what's the problem? I mean, if the father was happy and he said, "Oh, you're right, there is no
well,
damage,"
he wasn't happy at all.
what he doesn't know can't hurt him.
Well,
can
he's
it?
got a pot-marked car.
He
or a
doesn't
great
know
scratch.
that. Doesn't know it.
Well, no, his eyes are better now.
Oh, his eyes are better now. But
Hence the line when I said when his eyes were better.
yeah, true. I think. Oh, it sounds like he's also suffered from having 4 daughters. Terrible.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. It's a really difficult one. I think he shouldn't have such a long car anyway, as Matt would say. It's his fault,
It's his fault
for
for
having
being a
such
big
a
car.
big
It's
car
only a mistake.
and letting his daughter, who can't really drive the car. Therefore, I'm going to forgive M.
Oh, it's his fault.
That's superb.
Well,
But it's what you would say, Matt, isn't it? It's probably what you will say now.
Yeah, if he hasn't got an answer, class war. That's
Yeah,
the answer.
absolutely. Class war, or everything's just rubbish. Yeah, this is a tricky one actually, because I'm not sure. Is he still got the car? Because how many years ago are we talking about?
2000.
Oh, so it's
12 years ago.
if he's still got the car, it's a pretty old car anyway, and it would presumably ratch up a few notches and a few dents and a few pings, and his eyes must be fine now. So if he hasn't seen them now and he hasn't said anything, then I think he's probably quite cool with
Well,
it.
he has seen them now. That's why he said, "Excuse me, dear, I don't remember that scratch being there."
Yeah, but he's not actually apportioning blame, is he?
No, it's 'cause she's lied.
Yes, exactly. So I'm thinking that everybody's kind of happy. She's not confessed. He's kind of.
She hasn't been found out.
Yeah, she hasn't. So I'm thinking that nobody's really hurt. So I'm going to forgive as well.
Brother Matt, having had your ace removed from your hand.
Because he's got a big car. He's got whatever's coming to him. Your own fault.
Can't say
What I think would be interesting here is hearing this from his perspective, of him doing the confession of saying, "I got palmed off by my daughter, who claimed that there were these little dents on my car weren't really there. So what I did was I ran into her leg, pinned her in the knee. She won't be doing that again in a hurry. And me and my big car." So I am not going to forgive, because I'm going to come down on his side. Well done for pinning your daughter on the leg.
Well, I just think it would be quite interesting to hear from him. So, sir, you're very welcome, please. confessions@bbc.co.uk. I wonder if there are some father-daughter confessions which could come out of
Yes.
that. You know, that might be quite good. Driving around in the car. What else could we get?
Car
out of
park confessions.
Car
Got
park,
to be loads of them.
bad driving, bad parking.
Yes.
Now, this is an interesting tale that we have on tonight's confession, which comes from Paula. Thank you very much indeed. Dear Father Simon and the Enrobed, my confession is an ongoing one. It is still live, it is still active, and I am worried about the implications of what I am about to tell you, but here goes anyway. I always like ones that start like that. Our house, well, most of it, will have been braced for this moment as soon as I sent this email. I've been happily married to my husband Paul for 26 years. We met at a university young socialist party. He was a dashing engineering student from central England, me, an idealistic young drama student from the northwest. I had dated other men, but Paul was the man for me, and I knew it straight away. We had the same taste in music, same taste in fashion, and read the same books. We talked a lot, argued a lot, usually about the state of the world and the workers' revolution, as you do, and we enjoyed the same circle of activist friends. We married in 1990 and moved to the Midlands, where we both got jobs and started to raise a family. Domesticity set in, and it was fine, actually. We have had 3 children, and there is even ridiculous talk of us becoming grandparents. Now, I'm aware that you might be wondering where all this is heading, so I'll get to the point. Paul has always been very political. We have both been, I suppose, but it was always Paul that led the way. We joined the same political parties, we went on the same demonstrations, but it was Paul who laid down the party line somewhat, and I have to say he sort of assumed that I was going to go along with him. However, as the kids got older and demanded more time, while he went knocking on doors campaigning, I helped with the homework and did all that domestic stuff that women are still expected to do, even by left-wing revolutionary husbands. He, of course, supported women's rights and the feminist movement, although only in theory.
Sally's nodding away.
Never a true word was said.
And so we reach the point of this tale. While it may seem trivial to some, trust me, this will be big and potentially problematic in our house. You see, well, Paul was out campaigning and then voting for his super left candidate at the last election. I, Paula, his wife, voted Conservative. Yes, the same Paula that he met at the Young Socialists at university. The thing is, it was just that I changed my mind about a lot of things, but he stopped asking my opinion. Sometime around 1982, I think. Our children all know about me sending in this confession, and if Paul would like to discuss it further, I'll be at the kitchen sink tonight from about 6. He's still a lovely husband, by the way, with the cutest bottom that you could ask for, and that, as we all know, goes a long way. Please forgive me, my dear collective, for not telling my husband sooner, or more privately. Vive la revolution. That's Paula. Just like that story very much indeed. Okay, it's a story about a very politically active couple, but actually it's not about the politics. I think it's just about a couple who stopped talking and the revolutionary husband who just thought the wife would just fall in behind him.
I think that was the perfect way of confessing, actually, because, you know, after all those years, you can't suddenly say, sit down, you know, having a meal together and go, by the way, I've got something to tell you.
Yes,
I voted Conservative when he thought she was going to vote for the other party. I think she didn't do it just to spite him. She did it because she genuinely wanted to, and I think she should have a completely clear conscience, and good for you, you're completely forgiven.
I think it's just quite an interesting, domestic scene that she's almost now probably just starting to wash up, and husband may be coming in having rustled up the revolution a little bit further.
Don't forget to put your chain on while you're at the kitchen sink. I love this idea because I do think this, by the way, this is one of my favourite confessions ever, because I do think the political opinions of couples is incredibly important, and if you don't share them, the same opinion, I think often you can come to blows. I mean, you know, intellectual blows.
The great thing is that they
physical.
did, and they just kind of...
And yeah, absolutely. So I think it's quite a big piece of cement that binds a couple together. And if you change that, I think it can often spell disaster. I hope it doesn't for you, but I admire you hugely for coming out and talking about it before you've actually told him. So I'm very honoured that you've confessed it to us, and of course I will forgive you.
Okay, it's a good story. What do you think of this, Brother Matthew?
What I love about this is that she's staying with him because of his cute bum.
Well,
apparently that goes a long way. Well done.
Do you think that's true?
Absolutely, yes. Cute bums are enough for many relationships. So on the basis of that, and because it is hilarious that he's been out campaigning and she's been putting her ex next to the polar opposite group, I'm going to forgive. Well done.
What a way to find out, though.
Yes, indeed. Oh, National Radio. Well done.
I mean, we always change names, so you know it's not Paul and Paula.
He's going to know.
Do you think
if you've got a cute bum and you're voting
And by the way,
socialist-
are you suggesting that left-wing people don't have cute bottoms?
No,
therefore he's the only one.
No, in the interest of balance, people on the left also have cute derrieres.
but by the way, if you do split up and he has got a cute bum, please send him in my direction. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I wonder if there are any other
cute bum confessions?
No,
Yeah.
I wasn't
No.
thinking. Well, there might be, I suppose. No, I was thinking about kind of revolutionaries, political. If this is a sort of a story that reflects the scene in your house, anyway, we could do some political confessions. They'd be absolutely fine. Thank you very much indeed. So you know what you have to do. You go online, bbc.co.uk/radio2. Look for the drive time pages. The confessions archive is there, and there's a nice little form which you can fill out and send us your confession, or email confessions@bbc.co.uk. Good, so we move on. What are we doing? It's confessions. That's what we're doing. It's a drive time confession. Tonight comes from H. That's all. Just the letter H. Dear all. This is a most unusual confession, as it's not myself that needs to unburden any guilt, although I am sure that there are lots of occasions in my life that could merit me asking for forgiveness. The story starts when I was a young girl. While my father was working abroad, my mother felt that we should have a family pet. Knowing that my dad would never accept a dog or a cat, she thought a budgie would be ideal. Anyway, in a few weeks, our budgie, Billy Doo Skippy, don't ask, it's a long story, duly arrived at the house. I think it's quite a nice name for a budgie, don't you? Billy Doo Skippy.
It's an odd name.
It is an odd name, but as she says, don't ask. Anyway, Billy Doo was a lovely bird who spoke many words and was great fun. We'd spend many hours talking and squawking and feeding. Even mucking out was a joy. One sad day I returned from school to be met by my mother, who had her serious face on. She said I'd better sit down, as she had some sad news. She then told me that Billy Doo had passed away and offered me a chocolate bar to cheer me up. It was kind of like, the budgie's dead, have some chocolate. Well, you kind of think...
It works.
It does.
Nothing wrong with that.
That's good parenting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry about the bird.
It's not
Have
coming
some-
back. It's dead. It's not coming back.
Have some sweets.
Sorry, you've got to
There
have
you
an
go.
injection now. Here's a chocolate button.
A button?
Just a
I
button.
want more than a button.
Not two.
It's a very mean household.
If I'm having an injection, I want a whole bag of buttons. The big ones. All right? Anyway, where were we? Yes, okay. The budgie's dead. Here's some chocolate. H continues. To this day, I still cannot see a chocolate bar without thinking of Billy Doo. I was very sad. I was in tears, and I asked her how Billy Doo had died. She told me that he had died from cuttlefish overdose, which I think she made up. I accepted this explanation and arranged to bury Billy Doo in a shoebox filled with cotton wool so he could keep warm, and we had a solemn burial in the back garden with 2 lolly sticks fashioned as a cross. Lots more tears. We now move on 20-plus years and a conversation I was having with my father. We were sat in his local restaurant discussing things from my childhood. He said that he had something important to tell me, and he recalled that one day whilst at work he'd received an urgent telephone call and had asked to leave an important meeting. It was my mother, crying so hard she couldn't speak. My father was concerned that one of the children had been hurt and begged my mother to calm down. Once she did, she managed to tell him that the budgie had died. And what's more, she said, she had killed him. My darling mother had apparently been spraying the room with fly spray and had forgotten to cover Billy Doo's cage. When she returned to the room, the budgie was lying on the bottom of the cage, completely dead. There's a... What, man?
There's nothing funny about that.
Is there a sketch running through your mind?
Yeah.
My mother murdered our budgie, says H. Anyway, I have forgiven her. But I find it rather disturbing that my father didn't tell me the truth until I was nearly 30 years old. Maybe he thought I was not emotionally strong enough to cope with the truth. I feel that although my mother is no longer on this earth, it would do her soul good to know that she has been forgiven by both myself and the Gathered Collective. I await your judgment. Now, the difficult thing there is that it puts the... It's a little bit of a moral quandary here for you, Collective, because not only is it not H's confession, it's H's late mother's confession. So I don't know how you... I don't think we've had one of these. I mean, feel free always to confess on behalf of someone else. That's perfectly fine. Anyway, H's mother sprayed the room with fly spray, didn't cover... Obviously, you always have to cover the cage. And Billy Doo Skippy, was no more. What do you think? Sister
Well, I think
Rebecca?
poor mother. I mean, how horrifying to, by mistake, kill your budgie and in such a way. Awful.
Well,
and
just,
I mean,
think about the budgie. Just cover up the budgie. It's not difficult.
Well,
what
I
was
know.
she thinking?
Well, she obviously wasn't thinking at that time, and I can, she was probably busy or distracted or something.
Have you done something?
No, but I've been distracted on many occasions, and I do think she was just trying to protect her. Was it daughter?
Yes.
From the awful news. And I think if the daughter had discovered that it had been the mother who'd done it and not the cuttlefish poisoning, then it would have been pretty bad for the daughter. So I think really there's nothing to forgive.
I wonder
think
if
it was
fly
a-
spray is actually a better way to go than cuttlefish
Cuttlefish
poisoning.
poisoning. Yeah,
sounds
and
horrible.
why would you feed a budgie cuttlefish anyway?
Well, you do. You put it in the bottom of the cage.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and they
I
peck,
don't know
they
anything
peck
about
away, but you
budgies.
wouldn't want to have too much of it, would you?
Yeah. So no, I think H's mum, you're completely forgiven.
Okay. Now, Mother Superior.
Well, I'm really in no position to judge. My son, Harry, who I also call H, so there's a second coincidence. When he was about 3, 2 of his goldfish died, and he was completely and utterly distraught. And I realised that I basically killed the goldfish, inadvertently, I have to say, not deliberately.
With a cuttlefish.
With a cuttlefish, yes.
Shoved it in there.
I did. I stabbed the... No, I didn't. It was all to do with... I subsequently found out that I had been overfeeding them for several weeks. And so they died. And I haven't ever confessed that to Harry. So I would like to confess that now, because he was mortified that his goldfish had died. So I don't think I'm in any position...
All the problems he had later, that was down to
Well,
you.
and they're getting worse, let me tell you. So I'm in no position to judge, so I have to forgive.
Now, Brother Matthew, who'll have an interesting take on this.
Yeah, I've never killed any pets, but I wouldn't. I didn't know that you could kill budgies with fly spray. It doesn't say anything about that on the can that I've got at home. May kill your budgie if you spray too much of it. Never heard of that before.
Well, obviously it's implying that you should use your intelligence.
Well, no, I don't
come on,
think
he's
that's
a
the case at all.
sports
I think it's entirely down to the fly. The fly can the people who make the fly killers. They should say, do not spray this anywhere near your budgie, because your budgie could cop it. So I actually thought this one was going to turn out to be the budgie.
I'm sure they do say that.
Do
about
they?
Pets. I bet you they do.
They really? Well, in that case, I'm not going to forgive, because clearly it is clearly stated on this can, do not spray it anywhere near a budgie. What were you thinking? No, not forgiven.
Okay. All right, thank you very much indeed. So we'll do budgie confessions, fly spray confessions. I'm not sure we can cope with too many of those. And you send them to confessions@bbc.co.uk, or confess on behalf of your parents for stuff that they've done in the past. Now it's 90 minutes to 6 o'clock. This is Radio 2, Drive Time Confessions. Thank you very much indeed for all the stories which are coming in online. You can send us an email as well, confessions@bbc.co.uk. This is from Alice's mum. Thank you, Alice's mum. Dear Father Simon and members of the confessional, the occasion of my confession was some 20 years ago. At the time, I lived with my husband and small daughter in the Gulf state of Bahrain. These were golden days of expatriate life. My husband was one of several junior managers for a large UK-based trading house, and our lifestyle was comfortable and relaxed. Occasionally, our idyllic existence was punctuated by visits from senior managers from head office, at which time the company laid on a series of entertainments for the visiting bigwigs, cocktail parties, formal dinners, and the like. On one particular occasion, we were visited by God himself. Not actually, of course, but the most senior manager of the company, a man I shall name only as Lord MD. This man was universally feared, as he could make or break a career in the company on a whim, and occasionally did just that. On this visit, he broke with protocol and brought along his wife, Lady MD. The junior wives were co-opted to look after Lady MD during the days while the menfolk were working, and I was tasked with entertaining the lady to afternoon tea on the last day of her stay. My difficulty started at the welcome cocktail party when I first clapped eyes on Lady MD. There's no tactful way to describe her appearance. She had the biggest nose I've ever seen on a face that wasn't framed by tusks.
Oh dear.
It made Lady MD look like the elderly love child of Mr. Punch and Barbara Streisand, and that's being kind. It was a nose of colossal proportions. The reason this was a problem for me was that I was obliged to invite this woman into my home and into the orbit of my 3-year-old daughter, Alice. Anyone who has owned a 3-year-old, I'm not quite sure you ever own a 3-year-old, anyway, will be aware that they lack any sense of tact or decorum or indeed any other human inhibitions. And Alice was going through one of those phases in which she would comment accurately but frequently brutally on people's appearances. "You look like an old witch," she declared to an elderly lady who'd stopped to pat her on the head. And, "Your perfume's lovely, smells like horse." That's what she said to me. No amount of reprimanding or chastisement had ever made any difference to her, and in fairness, she was never malicious. She just simply stated what she saw and smelled. I couldn't just send Alice away for the day. We were expected to entertain in the family circle, and Lady MD would think it odd if my daughter wasn't there. So I decided to preempt the potential problem by making it quite clear that she must not make personal remarks about anything to do with Lady MD's appearance. I explained that it was something, and sometimes hurtful, to point out that people were old, for example, or that they had no hair. Unfortunately, this merely intrigued her. With that innate sixth sense that children appear to possess, she recognised that I was skating around the exact problem, and she wanted to know why. "Is the lady bald, then?" she asked. "No, that was just an example," I explained. "So what's the matter with her?" "Well, nothing, just don't say anything about how she looks." "Well, there must be something the matter," she argued. "Is she fat? Is she cross-eyed?" So I realised my mistake. Alice clearly wouldn't let it drop, and her imagination was now going into overdrive. "Does she have a pointy head? Is she as tall as a house?" These are good homework questions. Eventually I decided that telling her the truth was the best option. "Well, Alice, Lady MD has quite a big nose, and it would be rude to mention it." Now I really had her attention. "A big nose?" she said. "How big? As big as an elephant's?" "Don't be silly. As big as a potato?" "No." "A melon? How big?" And so it continued for the next day and the day after that. She simply wouldn't let it drop. Eventually, in despair, I told my friend Jane about how worried I was that Alice was going to cause a scene and mortally offend the wife of the most important man in the company. Jane was one of the other junior manager's wives and would be joining us at the party. She pointed out, as friends are wont to do, how stupid I'd been to attempt to reason with a 3-year-old in the first place. But then she put her not inconsiderable intelligence to work in finding a solution. Eventually she suggested that on the morning of the tea party, I take Alice to a swimming pool or to the park or just run around a lot and allow her to exhaust herself so that she would go down and have a nap at the crucial time. This was genius, an entirely plausible excuse for Alice not being at the tea party and yet also at home. She would be asleep upstairs and out of harm's way. Jane had come up trumps. So on the morning of the tea party, I took Alice swimming for 3 solid hours, and when we got home, she was perfectly happy to go to bed for a refreshing nap, just to be on the safe side.
Oh, no.
I gave her a spoonful of cough medicine, and she went out like a light. We've all done it. My guests started arriving not much later, and we sat for a while exchanging small talk with Lady MD in full alpha female mode. After half an hour or so, I went to get the tea things. Returning to the lounge, where everyone was seated, I placed the tray on the coffee table in front of Lady MD and heard her say, "Oh, how sweet," and a cold hand clutched my heart. She didn't mean the tea. I looked over my shoulder, and there, framed in the doorway in her lilac pyjamas, was Alice. Her hair all tousled from sleep, but her eyes were as wide as they could possibly be. Her mouth was a perfect oval of astonishment, and she positively vibrated with excitement. She was staring at Lady MD. She was seconds away from torpedoing my husband's career. I was paralysed. Fortunately, my friend Jane was quicker thinking than I. Realising how close we were to disaster, she made a desperate attempt to divert attention from the moppet in the doorway. She grabbed the teapot from the tray, rattled the cups loudly and said brightly, "Oh, Lady MD, would you like some milk in your nose?" Well, as a diversionary tactic, it worked a treat. Everyone turned to stare at her in horror. It took a second for her to realise what she'd said, and then she proceeded to make it much, much worse. I mean tea in your nose. A milk in your tea, not your nose. A milk in your tea, nothing to do with your nose. And finally subsided with, "Oh, my goodness." She put her head in her hands. Well, Father Simon, members of the Congressional, as you can probably imagine, the conversation that followed was a bit strained, and Lady MD left soon after. Alice actually behaved impeccably throughout and never so much as breathed a word out of place, even at one point generously offering Lady MD a bite of her salmon sandwich. But the damage had been done. I asked forgiveness on so many levels, for failing to trust my daughter not to embarrass me in the first place, for expecting a 3-year-old to respond to reason, and for creating a situation ripe for the public humiliation of a woman. But most of all, I seek forgiveness for involving my friend Jane in the episode. Her husband was, unexpectedly and undesirably, posted to a junior position in the Yemen only 2 weeks later.
Wow.
And as far as I know, his career never recovered. Jane, if you're out there, if it's any consolation, my husband and I continued to enjoy the expat lifestyle for many years. Thanks for taking the fall. From Alice's mum. Well, there you go. It's a great story from Alice's mum. Laughed out loud when I was reading that this afternoon. What do you say, Sister Rebecca?
That's got to be one of my favourite confessions.
It's a
ever.
calamitous tale.
It's got to be a children's book or a sitcom
It's
or
a sitcom,
something.
it's a movie,
It's hilarious.
it's everything.
The thing is, with a 3-year-old, I mean, my daughter's exactly the same. She can be trusted to be honest, always. And the worst thing you can do is say to them, listen, when so-and-so comes, just don't say anything, because that will make them say to them when they come, my mummy said that I shouldn't say anything
Yeah, why
about your
can't I
big
say that?
nose. Yeah, exactly. Worst thing. So I think she was actually right not to trust her daughter and to try and get her daughter to sleep. And I think she was absolutely right to just trust Jane, because Jane had obviously been completely sensible up until now. So it was a complete aberration. And Alice, you can't be expected to have known any differently. Sorry, Alice's mum, you're completely forgiven.
Jane's husband took the fall. What do you say, Mother Superior?
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with Rebecca, actually, because I think you cannot edit kids, especially at that age. You can't tell them what to say. And of course, you know, even now, in my 25-year-old son, if I say not to do something, he will do it. That's just what children do. I always remember being really embarrassed when he was little, actually. I was wearing a big yellow dress, and I was in the company of some of his other friends and mothers, and this boy shouted very loudly, "Look at Harry's mum, she looks like a banana."
Very good.
And I
See?
actually did. So, you know, that happens and you have to get over it. But you're forgiven because I think you tried your best. But, you know, mums, if you've got 3-year-olds, don't tell them what not to say.
Brother Matthew.
That was superb. My favourite confession this year, definitely. It's got memories of Don't Mention the War, hasn't it? It's Basil Fawlty all the way through it. Would you like tea in your nose? Superb. But frankly, if you've got a massive nose and you rise to a position of authority in a company, then I would say the best thing to do is absolutely be vicious whenever anyone mentions your nose and post them to the Yemen. Well done indeed. So I am going to forgive, because I would have done exactly the same if I had a massive nose and I was Lady MD. Well done.
Alice's mum, thank you very much indeed. I think we might get stuff kids say.
Yes.
I mean, we've had quite a lot of those anyway.
No, they're always good.
Embarrassed parents.
Yeah, plenty of mileage in that.
Nose-based... No, I don't think so. But any other kind of confession that spring to mind from that, let us know, please. You can send your confession online, bbc.co.uk/radio2. That's your lot for this week. We'll have more for you next week, of course. Remember, you can download our Daily Mayo podcast every day just after the show. Go to bbc.co.uk/radio2. Thank you for listening. If you have a confession, you can send us in via the website, or you can email confessions@bbc.co.uk. Thank you.
If you want to hear more from Simon and the team, tune in every weekday from 5 p.m. This is a download from the BBC. To find out more, including our terms of use, go to bbc.co.uk/radio2.